We'll move on. Jennifer Kramer, ma'am, if you have any questions, if you're on, please let us know.
Yes, I do. I was wondering about what evaluations have been done at the intersection with Orvis Way, both on Pleasant Grove and then up at Stetson.
Both of those intersections are included in the traffic impact study and are fully assessed. There are improvements proposed by the applicant at the 202 and Stetson intersection, which is related to this route. There are no improvements identified or necessary for traffic impact mitigation at the West Pleasant Grove Road Orvis Way intersection or the Orvis Way Stetson intersection.
For the Stetson and 202 one, when was that traffic study completed?
So the base data or existing traffic counts, as I referenced, were collected in October of 2019. So pre-COVID conditions while school was in session.
Okay. I think I remember from a previous meeting they talked about those were projections based on past data. Is that still true, or is this based on newly connected data?
The data was collected on the street in October of 2019.
Okay. And then so for the intersection at 202 and Stetson, what grade would that intersection have?
So with the development as well as the proposed improvements, the intersection will operate at an overall level of service D as in dog in the morning, which is acceptable, and C as in cat in the afternoon, which is also acceptable. Generally, you are looking to achieve level of service D as in dog or better in suburban conditions.
Okay, no more questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Denny or Patty McFadden, do either of the McFaddens have any questions if you're on this evening?
Yeah, I'm muted.
Mr. or Mrs. McFadden, do you have any questions?
Go ahead, you unmuted.
You just made them co-host.
Yeah, it's because for some reason they can't unmute themselves. Oh, the microphone shows, so they should be able to.
Mr. and Mrs. McFadden, can you ask a question? We cannot hear you. I'm wondering if they activated the audio on their end.
What the volume?
Okay. Not hearing anything.
Okay. I'll try again.
Mr. and Mrs. McFadden?
Sorry, it sounds like there is no microphone on the computer. Or any device.
So what we'll do is we're going to skip over the McFaddens for right now, and we'll come back and see if they are able to resolve their issues. And I'll move on to Carol Weller. Miss Weller, if you're on this evening.
Can you hear me?
I can, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. Because you can't satisfy PennDOT's recommendation to have turn lanes on 926 at South New Street, does this have any kind of impact on moving forward with the proposed development?
No, PennDOT has already indicated to the applicant that if they are not able to acquire the property to install the left turn lanes, that PennDOT would require the applicant to do what was possible within the existing right-of-way.
And what would that be?
That remains to be determined. until, you know, all pursuits have been made for the right-of-way, and that is documented. That is, you know, the process. And then ultimately, if it cannot be acquired, then additional plans will be prepared for PennDOT's review and approval for improvements contained within the right-of-way and property that the applicant controls.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weller. We do have someone on the phone with their hand raised, so let's try that. Caller at 876. If you could hit *6 and unmute yourself, identify yourself. Let's see what the issue is.
Unmuted.
Yes, this is Phil Jones, 1007 Jennifer Lane. I have
yes.
a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Jones. We had skipped over you, so go ahead.
Who determines that a D and a C is an acceptable level of rating?
That is standard criteria from PennDOT.
So PennDOT has said D and C is good stuff for suburbia.
That is correct.
Well, that's only comment. That's pretty pathetic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Moving on to our next party in order. William Worth. Mr. Worth, if you're on this evening.
I see Richard Worth.
I don't know if that's the same, sir. If that is you, please raise your hand.
No raised hand.
Okay. Bob Williman. Is Mr. Williman on?
Don't see it on the list.
Sir, if you're on, please raise your hand.
No raised hand.
Moving on to Linda Miller. Ma'am, if you're on and have a question, she has her hand raised, yes.
Go ahead, you should be unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hi, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I understand Ms. Nichols said that the report was dated May of 2020, but the numbers were updated from last October. So what was the difference in numbers between October and the final report in May?
So the base traffic count data collected in October 2019 is still used in the May 2020 study that I referenced. We simply addressed some other items in response to the comments we've received from the township's traffic engineer and from PennDOT. But the base traffic count data did not change during that time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Ellen Steele, do you have any questions?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I have a question about the exit K directly across from Dunvegan. We have a number of young children in our development, and I'm wondering, have you looked at the possibility of people avoiding the bottleneck at New Street and Pleasant Grove Road to access themselves to New Street further up, or to access General Howe to get to Route 52, or Tide Road to get to 52? It would seem to me we would have a number of cars flying through our neighborhood at that point. What do you think about that?
Based on our travel time assessments and the other route options that are now going to be provided in this area due to the new roadway connections, there would not be reason for traffic to choose the routes that you mentioned. There are better options in terms of less travel time, which is typically how drivers choose their route.
Well, not if you go down Pleasant Grove to New Street. It's going to be a backup. And it would be easier for people to go up Dunvegan and out New Street above that particular area.
Do you have any other questions, ma'am?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mila, I saw the McFadden's drop off, and then I saw a Denny iPad jump back on. So I have a feeling that might be Mr. McFadden. If you want to come back to him and see, perhaps if he can unmute and see if he has any questions.
I don't see McFadden under the participant list.
Do you see Denny?
Let me see. Denny's iPad?
Yes.
Okay, I'll unmute. You unmuted.
Yes, I'm sorry for all the confusion. We had no questions after all that, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to confirm is that you, Mr. and Mrs. McFadden?
Yeah,
Yeah, I had my name changed originally, I'll change it again.
and for anybody else that's going through it, you have to give permissions for a Zoom meeting to access your microphone under settings. So there.
Thank you both. Thank you both for your patience. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break here at 8:30, so we'll go until then. Victor or Carly Malatesta, or either of the Malatestas on and have a question? If you do, please raise your hand.
No raised hands.
All right, moving on for David or Iris Berger. Mr. and Mrs. Berger, do you have any questions if you're on this evening?
No raised hands.
All right, moving on. Karen Grime. I don't know if she's on or not.
I don't see. No raised hands.
If Karen Grime is on, please raise your hand. Again, if you're on the phone, it's *9. I'm not seeing anyone. We'll move on to Steve Ernie. Mr. Ernie, if you have any questions, if you're on this evening.
No raised hands.
Eve Herrick. Is Eve Herrick on, and do you have any questions?
No raised hands.
All right, we'll do one more before the break, who I know is on. Anthony Simkovich. Mr. Simkovich, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Aren't you sorry? Moments of a clean getaway. I actually have two. First question is just to clarify again, the base data, the on-site data collection. If I remember correctly, that was based upon data that was done in like a Thursday and a Friday in the month of August. And what you're saying now is that that's now been updated from data in October of 2019. Is that correct?
That is correct. The most recent traffic study submitted dated May 15, 2020 utilizes October 2019 traffic data.
How many days of the week was the traffic study done, and what particular days was it done?
So we are required to count one day, 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. at each of the study intersections.
And what day of the week was that?
We are required to study a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and our data falls within that time frame.
Okay. You had said that I think between Mr. Dahl and your conversation with him that approximately there'll be 600 new cars that will be accounted for in the traffic study because of the development?
I did not state that. Mr. Dahl, I believe, stated that in his question. That is not the trip generation within the study.
How many cars do you anticipate?
So what we are required and to evaluate and what is documented within the traffic impact study, again dated May 15th, 2020, is the weekday morning peak hour or peak 60 minutes, where we have a total of 198 trips entering and exiting the development. And in the weekday afternoon peak hour or peak 60 minutes, we have 259 total entering and exiting trips.
Okay, going back again to the previous question that I had, do you know what day of the week that study was done? Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday? What particular day?
So it's a large study area. The traffic counts were completed on different days. They are not required to be completed on the same day.
I'm frozen.
So they fall on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday time frame as required.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday, because there's much more traffic from Westchester University because that's a major day for commuters at the university. So I just throw that out there as a comment. It would be good to know what day that actually was done. And as far as the trips are concerned, what percent of the cars that are there do you think your traffic study mitigates? All of them? 80%?
We are required to mitigate, the applicant is required to mitigate their traffic impact from their additional trips in accordance with very specific criteria from PennDOT, as well as satisfy level of service criteria of the township. With the development and the proposed improvements, those criteria are satisfied.
And what is that criteria?
PennDOT looks at overall intersection level of service. The development cannot cause a drop in letter grade within the overall intersection level of service, or if it does result in a drop in letter grade, the overall delay cannot increase by more than 10 seconds. If either of those criteria are violated by the additional traffic, improvements are required to mitigate that impact.
So there is no data or analysis that's done or required by PennDOT that would tell us, for example, 500 to 600 more cars, what's been mitigated by the traffic design. There's no way of knowing that.
We are required,
calculating that.
We are required to study the weekday morning peak hour and the weekday afternoon peak hour and assess it in accordance with PennDOT's criteria, which I just referenced, and utilize the trip generation data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, as that is what is required by PennDOT.
So the answer is no to my question.
The answer is that we are required to assess the real trip generation based on those criteria within the traffic study.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Simkovich. So it being 8:35.
Oh, and thank you, by the way, for participating. Thank you.
Thank you. It being 8:35, I think what we'd like to do is take our break for the evening, allow the court reporter to take her break. So we'll go off the record for 5, 6, 7 minutes. Don't go far. Please mute yourselves or your video just so that you're aware that you're still being recorded. I also, just before we go off the record, want to say one thing. I did receive an email from Mindy Rhodes, who is a participant this evening, who is not a party but is recording. She just let me know she is recording the meeting, audio and video. So she was not able to announce that early on, but she did email me. So I want everyone to know that she is also recording audio and video. So with that, we'll go off the record for 5 or 6 minutes. We're still off the record, Eleanor, but I just want to give everyone a little heads up. We're getting ready to come back on. So if you can get prepared.
All set.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Kline, let me know when you're ready.
I am ready, thank you.
Mr. Edelman, are you good?
Yes, I am, Pat, thank you.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go back on the record. We'll continue the questioning of Ms. Kline. We'll move on to the next party. Fenton Mejia. Do you have any questions for Ms. Kline if you're on?
I do have a question. For some reason, we don't have our video up. We just lost it. Hang on.
We can hear you, so that's fine.
Okay, cool. Here we go. Question for Nicole. Nicole, who exactly does the traffic counts? Is it a source that you guys hire, or you guys do the counts? Who does the traffic counts?
We collect the traffic counts.
You you collected.
The firm that I work for, McMahon Associates, we collect the traffic data.
Okay. Question.
Nothing further?
That's it.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. I asked earlier for a Nicholas Bonkowski for the Quarry Swimming Association. He has individual status as well. I don't know if he is jumped on or not, but I'll ask for the record. Mr. Bonkowski, do you have any questions?
I don't see a raised hand.
All right, moving on. Dr. Cecilia Wright, if she is on, does she have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Can you hear me?
We can, ma'am. Please feel free.
Thank you. It seems like we've spent a lot of months trying to bring to light the traffic problems that'll be increased by this increase of 300 homes. But I was concerned about two areas. One, Orvis Way, 2, Stetson Boulevard. So before this Zoom, I drove through up New Street over Pleasant Grove Road, which is extremely narrow. So even though it'll have speed bumps and other traffic controls, I really don't see how the traffic can increase the way it is. I know you said you were going to widen it, but I would think that there would need to be sidewalks provided also for children that could walk down Orvis Road and cross the street, Pleasant Grove, to get into the development. It's very close to Stetson. Perhaps Starkweather would not. Most of those might ride the bus, but I think there would be children walking. So I wanted to find out if the provision was for the sidewalks to be added. That was the first question.
The land development plan does indicate the sidewalks that the applicant will provide as part of the development, and the site engineer will review those as part of his testimony later during this hearing, as I understand.
I think it's related to the traffic because of the kind of road and the distance. I also drove Orvis Way to Stetson Boulevard, and there are 3 lanes, one a left turn, one a straight over, and one a right turn. There is room for 5 cars to wait at the light. So what is the traffic provision for people that will be cutting through Pleasant Grove to Orvis Road to Stetson Boulevard to make a left onto 202 North?
As I presented during my testimony, there is a conceptual plan for improvements proposed by the applicant at the intersection of 202 and Stetson Boulevard. Greg, could you indicate the exhibit number?
Oh, I paid attention to that, but there's only room for 5 cars from the light.
Ma'am, if Ms. Kline can answer the question for you, please. Just one moment. Thank you.
So as that exhibit is being confirmed, as demonstrated in the exhibit, the applicant proposes to provide a second dedicated left turn lane to increase the capacity for the storage of vehicles exiting at Stetson to travel northbound on Route 202. And that exhibit is A48B.
Okay, so that'll allow for 10 cars. It seems to me that it's not going to actually solve all the traffic problems that are going to be brought on by the connector road. So the connector road, you think, will take the traffic off of 926 through the connector road, over Orvis Road, and make a left onto 202. That was what you said you would expect people to do, correct?
Within the traffic study, there is very detailed assessment of the anticipated traffic diversions based on travel times and the route options. And there are times of the day when some traffic will divert in that manner.
Okay. So when it doesn't work, what will be the plan then? Does that rely on the township then to fix it after all of this is done and 250 cars, 200 of them decide to use this little road? That fixes it? I don't know.
Objection, that's argumentative. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I'm arguing with you about it for sure.
Yeah. Okay, I was just checking.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Wright, I'm gonna agree with Mr. Edelman and ask you to ask a different question, please.
No, I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Does Mr. Vosberg have any questions? William Vosberg.
They're both on the same device.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Not at this time, I have no questions.
Thank you, sir. Richard Hurst or Suzanne Kruger, if you are on, either of you, do you have any questions?
I don't see a raised hand.
Richard Hurst or Suzanne Kruger, if you have any questions, can raise your hand, please. All right, we're moving on. We have Renee Rockwood or Thomas Martin. If either Thomas Martin or Renee Rockwood are on and have questions.
Yep. Can you hear us?
Can you identify yourself, please?
Sure, Thomas Martin.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Martin. Can you speak up a little bit? It's a little hard to hear you.
Sure. So, a couple of questions. We talked about on West Pleasant Grove Road putting in the speed tables for traffic calming. In the creation of those speed tables, how do you anticipate the interaction of those new pieces of infrastructure with existing residential driveways?
Sure. So we've identified, as documented in the exhibit that I initially testified to, that we've identified some areas where these speed tables would be appropriate. And that is with consideration for the location of existing intersections and with driveways as well. As I indicated earlier, that a speed table would not be located, directly where Doug Vegan intersects. It would also not be located directly where a driveway intersects. So we don't have exact locations yet. We have not received feedback from the township on our proposal or this exhibit. But have simply demonstrated that the applicant would work with the township to place the speed tables appropriately within these areas. And certainly they would be with respect to intersections and existing driveways.
For the record, that's exhibit, I believe, A57.
With the addition of those speed tables, do you have a plan for how that will affect stormwater runoff?
The stormwater design will be completed as part of the detailed engineering. But at this phase, based on preliminary assessment, they would be designed in order to allow stormwater to continue to flow regardless of their placement. So these devices end prior to the outside of the cartway. And so they would be designed to not impede stormwater flow along the roadsides.
One other question on you indicated that West Pleasant Grove Road was to be widened to accommodate more traffic, or to accommodate traffic, I guess, for whatever reason that they want to do that. Would that increased surface area of that road then increase the amount of stormwater runoff?
The road widening along the property frontage on West Pleasant Grove Road has been required by the township to meet their ordinance criteria for a collector road, which is the classification the township has assigned to West Pleasant Grove Road. And so the applicant is required to complete that widening. And the widening will be, or is, I should say, the site engineer will assess the stormwater impacts of that widening. And so they can testify specifically and answer any questions with regard to stormwater design.
Right, but that really wasn't my question. My question was, would a wider roadway cause an increased amount of water from storm?